Well, it's just been mentioned by Sherwin, the recent flooding which devastated KwaZulu Natal, and that has now drawn into sharp question whether the country can prevent a debilitating death toll from another natural disaster. Protecting vulnerable areas from the ravages of climate change is needed. The question is how. The Minister of Environment, Barbara Creecy, says municipalities have to be made more climate resilient.
Unfortunately, the KwaZulu Natal floods that we've just seen, as well as day zero that we saw in Cape Town a few years ago, are precursors of the kinds of extreme weather events that will happen with greater frequency and an even greater severity as climate change continues to take impact on our world.
Climate experts say the impact of extreme weather changes is not binary, but rather cuts across all sections of society, economy and environment.
It is not just a humanitarian crisis or a crisis of greater migration or a crisis about the environment and biodiversity. It's also a crisis about socio-economic fabric of society. It hugely impacts our economies. It hugely impacts the safety of families and women and girls.
For the Minister of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment, collective effort is needed to combat the impact of future natural upheavals.
There's been a perception that climate change is something that is going to happen in the future. What I think these floods are telling us, together with other episodes of extreme weather events such as the droughts that have taken place in the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape, is that we are living through the consequences of climate change now, and that those consequences are going to get more severe. So we can imagine that here in sub-Saharan Africa we're already seeing temperature increases of approximately 2.2 degrees on average, and this means that these extreme weather events are going to become ever more frequent. As a department, we have worked with municipalities across the country to develop climate resilience strategies. What we have to do now with urgency is to start to mainstream those climate resilience strategies into the planning documents of municipalities and into the budgets of municipalities.
Early warning systems and effective rapid response measures to disasters have been touted.
We can no longer accept these interim solutions that are being promoted by certain parts of the government. For example, this idea of further oil and gas exploration off the coast.
Big polluters have been blamed for contributing to emissions. Environmentalists want fossil fuels like coal, gas and oil to be scrapped for renewable energy.
We also need to make sure that our public finance institutions are no longer funding coal, oil and gas. We need to transition away from these dirty fuels as soon as possible if we are to avoid future disasters like we've seen unfold in KwaZulu Natal.
That's completely unacceptable. We cannot literally afford it in terms of the economics of our country. We also can't afford it in terms of the impact of climate change. So really we must join up government decision-making, government's transparency, the democratic process, and our voices as citizens, as communities who consume energy.
A clearer understanding of environmental policy and getting municipalities to put them into effect is critical, such as ensuring that buildings in environmentally sensitive areas are built to withstand any extreme weather occurrences.
We're also obviously going to have to think very hard about how we are building infrastructure and how we are going to build that infrastructure in such a way that it can cope with severe storms and deal with the runoff. One of the ways in which we can deal with runoff is by supporting what we call ecosystem services. These are the natural services that nature provides to help deal with flooding and also with water storage.
In Southern Africa, as the weather conditions fluctuate, urgent climate change strategies are needed from all sectors of society to effectively combat the devastating impact it's having on vulnerable communities such as those in KwaZulu Natal, the Eastern Cape and the Northwest. Nozintombi Mia, SABC News.